Myo Renge Kyo Nam Myo Renge Kyo Nam Myo Renge Kyo. Hello everyone. We're going to finish up this Go Show today, or in this video. Let's just go ahead and finish the Go Show, and then we'll talk about it a little bit, or I'll talk about it. So, we ended with, there's not a single worthless stone or the mountain island of Penglai where no poisons are known. Who had special knowledge of the subject. In its relation to the Lotus Sutra, the country was like the Kunlun Mountains, where there is not a single worthless stone, or the mountain island of Penglai, where no poisons are known. However, during the 50 or more years since the Kenin era, 1201 to 1204, the priests Dainichi and Bida have spread the teachings of the Zen school, casting aside all the various sutras and postulating a doctrine that is transmitted outside of the teachings. And Honen and Ryukan have established the Pure Land school, contradicting the teachings of the true Mahayana, and setting up a provisional doctrine. These men are, in effect, casting aside gems and instead gathering stones, abandoning the solid earth and trying to climb up into the air. They know nothing about the order in which the various doctrines should be propagated. The Buddha warned of such persons when he said that it was better to encounter a mad elephant than an evil friend. In the encouraging devotion chapter of the Lotus Sutra, it is recorded that the last 500-year period, or 2,000 or so years after the Buddha's passing, there will be 3 types of enemies of the Lotus Sutra. Our present age corresponds to this last 500-year period. And as I, Nichiren, ponder the truth of the Buddha's words, I realize that these 3 types of enemies are indeed real. If I allow them to remain hidden, then I will not be the votary of the Lotus Sutra. Yet, if I cause them to appear, then I am almost certain to lose my life. The 4th volume of the Lotus Sutra states, since hatred and jealousy toward this sutra abound even when the thus come one is in the world, how much more will it be so after his passing? The 5th volume says it will face much hostility in the world and be difficult to believe or follow. The same volume also reads, we care nothing for our bodies or lives, but are anxious only for the unsurpassed way. And the 6th volume reads, not hesitating even if it costs them their lives. The 9th volume of the Nirvana Sutra says, for example, it is like a royal envoy skilled in discussion and clever with expedient means, who, when sent on a mission to another land, would rather, even if it costs him his life, in the end conceal none of the words of his ruler. Wise persons, too, do this. In the midst of ordinary people, and without begrudging their lives, those who are wise should without fail proclaim the thus come one's prized teachings from the correct and equal sutras of the great vehicle. The great teacher Chang'an, commenting on this passage, says, a royal envoy would rather, even though it cost him his life, in the end conceal none of the words of his ruler, means that one's body is insignificant, while the law is supreme. One should give one's life in order to propagate the law. When I examine these passages, I know that I do not call forth these 3 enemies of the Lotus Sutra. If I do not call them forth, then I will not be the votary of the Lotus Sutra. Only by making them appear making them obvious. Can I be the votary? And yet, if I do so, I am almost certain to lose my life. I will be like the venerable Aryashima, or Aryasimha, or Bodhisattva Aryadeva. Nichiren, 10th day of the second month. So, this Gosho, as I've said before, was purported to be written as a follow-up to the earlier one, which we discussed, or I discussed with you, on the securing the correct teaching for peace in the land. A couple of things are going on here that I want to remind you of, because this occurs a lot in Nichiren, and some students get a little. They start to perceive it narrowly and see Nichiren as just a troublemaker, which is what they certainly said about him in his day. But I want to remind you that Nichiren is like our best example of exactly what Shakyamuni Buddha was teaching us. And that is that to understand Buddhism, to understand the true nature of all phenomena and the way our mind can perceive it, is to study all of Buddhist scholarship, not just one book, not just one type of learning. It's all good, but not only did he teach in levels during the periods of his teaching life, but there's a reason why, everything we learn as human beings, we start from basic understandings and we build upon them, right? Anything, cooking, anything. This is our entire scholastic, since before the Greeks, right? You got to know this before you can understand that. Some people catch on more quickly, and some do not, but that doesn't change the order of the teaching, right? So, Shakyamuni and several scholars after him kept reminding students that if you hope to understand what we're talking about here in the Buddhist method, you have to study broadly. In fact, once you study all of the Buddhist scholarship, because that sets your mind to craft understanding, it's about meaning and understanding, then freely study everything, because ultimately all of it will justify the correct understanding. And that correct understanding is correct to you specifically. Your friends, the person sitting next to you, people you don't know, they'll all study the exact same stuff. But their path to realization is their own. We all have our unique, this is why you hear words like innumerable or immeasurable. It's because if you try to encapsulate the mind of, what do we have now? We're going on 8 billion people on the planet. We have 7 point something billion people on the planet. No, will be more. Heck, I don't think that I could tell you, let me say that a different way. I know that I can tell you that the way I see the world today is completely different than I saw it in my teens, and my 20s, and my 30s, and my 40s, so on. And if I happen to be chanting after studying some particular writing, scholarship of Buddhism, and I'm chanting, I may get a moment of clarity that will change in an instant how I see everything. So the idea that there's only one way, I want to be careful here, is not a prescribed direction like you get with your computer or a program or a bicycle. There is a method, and the method is an inculcation of knowledge that comes through you, because Buddha, that mind state, that ultimate understanding of all things is already there. What's different in each and every one of us is the obfuscation, the attachments, the desires, the thoughts that create little veils of misunderstanding, of obfuscation, of fogging up the works. And the more we study, the more we peer through the fog here and there, and things start to get clearer and clearer for us, our specific fog. So method is not instruction. Method is a meaningful understanding of the goal. And all of us come to that in our own way. Some of us very similar to others, some of us not. But we all can get there, and we all can get there immediately depending on our determination and our conviction. And the more we study, the more we hone those things. Nichiren is a perfect example of the perfect student, the perfect bodhisattva, right? He is an expression of the bodhisattva path. So, when he speaks, when he writes these notes and these little missives and so forth, on the one hand, we have a lot of historical information about the period, much more than we do about, Shakyamuni. And a lot of what Japan, feudal Japan, was going through at the time, the government changes and the loyalties, all the different stuff of a nation. Even though it was back in the 13th century, it bears a lot of resemblance to stuff we go through in the 19th, 20th, and every century. So it's, in that way, quite meaningful to read Nichiren on that level as well. So on the one level, it's the scholarship and the use of scholarship to say, look, I'm not saying, it's not my opinion that this is the ultimate teaching. Because every time he opens his mouth, he cites all of his sources. The scholarship of Buddhism, all of Buddhism. He's not saying the Lotus Sutra is the only thing you should study. No. He's saying in the scope of everything you study in Buddhism, the position, the primacy, the place in the study of Buddhism that is the ultimate teaching is obviously the Lotus Sutra. He didn't come up with that. This was said over and over and over again for centuries. Tendai, Chi-yi, or Chi-che, depending on which translation you follow. The great Bodhisattva at Tendai Mountain in China in the 6th century, what was it, 564 or 6? I always get those numbers mixed up. That's terrible. I am unlike Nichiren in that I am not, and a lot of you who are able to quote and pick out specific statements in various, I can lead you to certain sutras. I know I'm more of a meaning and understanding kind of guy, which is why I'm doing this. I'm trying to make all that hyperbole and all that complex thinking that's been written down a little more accessible, a little more democratic. But make no mistake, my conviction is very high. So although I can't say, chapter 24, sentence 10 of this and that, like Nichiren, who's incredible at that, So I leave that to him. I can lead you to Nichiren, and I can lead you to specific sutras that have in their scope of meaning and their usefulness this or that or that. I can send you to the Lankavatara to understand the nature of mind. I can send you to the Vimalakirti so you understand how everyone has a different path to their own enlightenment. The perfection of wisdom on the Bodhisattva practice. Then the thing is, as I had a discussion recently, the true meaning and understanding of the Lotus Sutra is built on those. I've been in organizations many years ago who focused on just one book. Even if you just focused on the Lotus Sutra, it's going to be hard for you because so much of the Lotus Sutra has this assumed base of knowledge. So even if you just dabble in the other sutras, even if you don't read every page, although I suggest you do, you're going to get little jewels of knowledge in those things that when you come back to the Lotus, you're going to go, shoot, I get this now. That's how we work. That's how humans work. The Buddha mind, the Buddha nature, the Buddha wisdom, whatever you want to call it, is already extant. All we need to do is recognize it, reveal it, realize it. But our paths to get to that realization has to go through a lot of misinterpretations, ignorance. So if you get stuck on this is it, check yourself. You may just be creating another obstacle. All right? Now, Nichiren, these two Goshos, the one we just finished and the one that it references, the Peace in the Land, he ticked off a lot of people because in his day, the popular stance was Nembutsu. Still remains today. You see it in martial arts movies. You'll hear it. Amitabha, Amida Buddha, chanting that name of that fictional character so that they can, when they die, go to a... And that's not Buddhism. It just isn't. All you have to do is study a little and you'll find that's not Buddhism. That Pure Land is right here and now. Shakyamuni said this himself. This very land, skies, seas, tree, this is enlightenment itself, is in the Saha world. This is the only place you'll experience Buddha. When you're dead, you're dead. Like everything, all phenomena arise and dissipate, arise and fall away, arise, and as Nagarjuna would say, there's an origination, there's a duration, there's a decline or decay, and there is destruction or annihilation. That is the process of all things, thoughts, earth, universe, people. So if you're hoping to get to a pure land after you die, you're not practicing Buddhism. Now, Nichiren is talking like this to people who, hey, 2,600 years ago, or 1,000 years ago, or 500 years ago, or in his time or in our time, have you ever met anyone who just loves change? Please change my mind. Please tell me I'm wrong. It's not about right and wrong so much as it is correct understanding. Incorrect understanding in Buddhism is ignorance. It's not stupidity unless you know it and then deny it. Now you're stupid. But if you don't know, or you've been influenced by bad friends, then you're ignorant. But if you stay in your ignorance, once somebody tells you you're ignorant, you need to understand this, now it starts coming on you. And this Nichiren is fighting this battle his whole life. They tried to kill him several times. This letter really peed him off. the Nembutsu. Say, hey, who the heck do you think you are, right? So in Nichiren, my point is, we have a prime example of Buddhist scholarship described and prescribed by Shakyamuni Buddha himself. We have someone who is, at the exhortation of the Buddhist teachings themselves, doing exactly what he must do. And that is to correct misinterpretations. He has to, because if he doesn't, he's complicit. And he's no longer practicing Buddhism. Well, that's not acceptable. Right? And he helps us to access the scholarship that demonstrates the point he's making. Not that I, Nichiren, am correct, but that I am the greatest votary, the supporter, how we need a word that says the destroyer of ignorance. This is Nichiren's role. This is why they call him the Shramana of Japan, because of his ability to destroy ignorance, to light the lantern in the dark cave so that you can see where you're going. Right? He didn't make the cave, he didn't make the lantern, but he sure knows how to use it and how to navigate the lantern, the cave, right? So this is Nichiren. If you have questions about that, if I've touched on something that made you go, "Oh, what do you mean by that?" Hey, I'm not a perfect being, so I may have some ideas in my head I'm trying to communicate. They may not come out fully, so I rely on you to question me, make comments, let me know. Because all I'm trying to do is emulate Nichiren, right? I'm trying to be a good de-obfuscator, trying to scatter the fog. I don't want to create more, so please, all right? And with that, I once again have to tell you how much I appreciate your participation. Take care. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo.